Yeah, I mean, the psychedelic world is very white and male in America.
Yes.
And I've noticed that from the beginning. Most of the, you know, most of the researchers are white male, most of the scientists, which was my focus. And you look at the history, and most of the big characters in the history have been white men. Do I perpetuate that by writing about them? I guess I do. There are some really important female characters in this book, though, and some of them people of color. Maria Sabina, for example, the woman who turned on Gordon Wasson and really brought psilocybin to the West inadvertently. And that was, you know, that's not a happy story for her.
Right.
In the end, that you know, led to essentially the destruction of her little village in Oaxaca as celebrities descended, and her house was burned down by people in the village. They were so mad at her. She regretted having done it. But anyway, there's a very important woman of color in this narrative. Of the guides I work with 3 guides. 2 of them were women. Mary, one of them, is really kind of the hero of the book in many ways. Are there women that I overlooked? I'm sure there are. You know, some of that is no doubt a result of my perspective, but a lot of it is a result of the history that I was writing about. You could write an alternative history of psychedelics, and you could talk all about Albert Hoffman's assistant and Gordon Wasson's wife, and you know, so is there a feminist history of psychedelics to be written? I hope so, and I hope somebody writes it. You know, this is not the last book on psychedelics. I think these other perspectives need to be told. I'm not the best person to tell them, perhaps, but I hope there are many more books to be written from a variety of perspectives. In terms of indigenous peoples, you know, it's funny, someone stood up in Cambridge and said something that I found really upsetting. This was the second day of my book tour. This woman stands up from the Boston Entheogen Network, maybe she's watching, and she says, as the de facto leader of the psychedelic community, or the psychedelic movement. I was like, really? And, you know, and Rick Doblin was in the room, the real leader. And I turned to him and I made him stand up and absorb all this weird juju. And then she went on to say, you know, how do you answer the criticism that there aren't more African Americans in the psychedelic community? Actually, she said more people of color, and there actually are quite a few people of color if you're willing to go beyond the borders of America and look at people in South America and Central America, and you know, the shamanic tradition. There are tons of people of color involved in ayahuasca, for example. But I think she was thinking about African Americans, and that's a really interesting question. I would get the same question about food. You know, why don't we have more people of color involved in the food movement? And they're legitimate questions. But first, you know, I'm not a leader. I mean, you just made the point. I'm a newcomer. How can I be a leader? I don't know enough to advocate. I'm still learning. But people are hungry for leadership, definitely. Yeah. So anyway, you know, my focus, though, I think, I wasn't trying to write the comprehensive history of psychedelics in the world. I was really writing, at the center of this book is a renaissance of scientific research, Western scientific research. I'm interested in the shamanic tradition insofar as it influences that, and so I go off from that spine, but that spine is science, and that science is you know, is pretty white and pretty male.